Hey everybody, Argent here, and this is a completely scientific, not at all just completely made up on the spot to have a fun video and talk about the different characters in Game of Thrones. I'm going to talk about what I think people's IQ is. So, this is roughly how I understand IQ ranges. About 90 to 110 is normal. That's the normal range. People slightly smarter, people slightly dumber. 110 to 120 is above average. 120 to 130 is intelligent. 130 to 140 is very intelligent. 140 up is the genius range. And then it just kind of exponentially goes up from there. So that's kind of broadly the criteria I'm using to determine how smart or dumb I'm saying people are. Now, an issue with a lot of fiction is people tend to be above average IQ because they have to be able to narrate properly. So they need like a pretty good vocabulary. They need to be able to express themselves. In order for things to happen plot wise, people need a lot of agency and a lot of often education and stuff like that. Also, the people who write books are almost always better educated and probably higher IQ than the average. And so they tend to write characters who are more like them. I know in my whenever I write, my characters tend to be pretty like above average in terms of that. It's also just kind of a self projection. So what did I base this on? Kind of a combination of stuff. What the narrator or what kind of in universe people say about a character. Whether or not they have the quick trait in the CK2 Game of Thrones mod or the genius trait. Feats that they've done on the show. Have they proven themselves to be intelligent? Have they, like, what are the kind of things that they've proven themselves able to do? That sort of thing. I should note there's a difference between judgment and intelligence. Because some people will probably seem, like, illogically high on this series despite the fact that they're really stupid or have horrific judgment. They're related, but they're kind of separate. There's lots of very smart people who are really naive or just can't read people. It's a lot of autistic people are like that. So it's kind of a combination of my impression, things they've done, what the fandom kind of says about them, what other people in universe say, what George R. R. Martin has said, that kind of thing. So that being said, let's get into this. So I think the person with the highest IQ in Game of Thrones in A Song of Ice and Fire is Qyburn, which might seem like kind of a weird person to pick to be the smartest person. But I mean, when you think about it, the man was able to bring a headless knight whose body was decaying back to life as a Frankenstein monster. Not only that, but zombie Gregor Clegane is able to follow orders. He's able to fight, etc. And he was able to do this ostensibly with medieval technology. Qyburn, as creepy and disturbing as he is an unrivaled genius. In addition to that, he's also able to build scorpions, and I know any decent engineer could do it, but it's not his area of expertise. He's obviously a biologist. He can also serve as Hand of the King in the show. He serves as a spy master in the books. So aside from being a brilliant scientist, he's also skilled as a spy. He's also good with administration. Just in terms of what we've seen from him, he is an unrivaled genius. So he's number one. He's the smartest person in the show / books. Number 2 and 3 are Littlefinger and Varys. Appropriate since they were for a long time direct rivals, Varys viewing himself as the agent of order and Littlefinger viewing himself as the agent of chaos. And I think I put them in the genius level range because they're both very smart and they're both good at pretty much everything they do. Varys is regarded as being as being an incredibly good actor. He's able to imitate just about anyone. He's able to take on just about any face. He was able to, coming from nothing, build a spy network and together with Illyrio, just become some of the wealthiest people in the free cities. He was able to come from nothing to be the spy master for the Seven Kingdoms and more or less run the show for just decades. So I think if we look at the depth of knowledge Varys had, what he's been able to achieve basically just with brains alone, coming from absolutely nothing, being a eunuch of all things whose dick was sold to some shadow binder. I don't think it's controversial to say Varys has a genius level IQ. Littlefinger is very much the same. He's more of an administrator and a financier than a spy master. He's still good at that though. But once again, he's someone who came from virtually nothing, and solely with his abilities with numbers, his abilities to manipulate people, his abilities, like even when Tyrion Lannister, who's we're told is a genius, looks at his books, he can't make sense of them. That's how complicated Littlefinger made them. Littlefinger is a genius. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. He has his like 10,000 step plan to cure the common cold, and it's most of the events of the series are long term plots of his. Tyrion Lannister, I don't think that should be controversial. I think the book's overrated intelligence. I haven't seen him do that much that's really that like smart. He doesn't strike me as being half as smart as he thinks he is. Much as with Daenerys, I don't see why they think he's a genius and why other characters do. I guess because he likes to read books, and he kind of has some scholarly aspects to him. I don't know, but Tyrion, we're told, is a genius. He has the genius trait in the CK2 Game of Thrones mod. The fans think he's a genius, so he's a genius. Brandon the Blackfish Tully. This may be a bit of a stretch, but from my recollection of the books and people I've talked to, he was the mastermind behind a lot of Robb's victories. He's known as being one of the best battle commanders in Westeros and just being an extremely talented and able man. So I put him into the genius range because whenever he was planning Robb's battles, they never lost a fight whenever he was on the field. And Robb, to his credit, was smart enough to realize that Brandon the Blackfish Tully was smarter than him, and from at least my recollection, tended to let him plan the strategy. Grand Maester Pycelle. I know Pycelle kind of seems like an idiot, but he's never really done anything dumb. He just kind of acts like a fool. Whenever it comes to anything related to knowledge or actually providing advice to a Lannister, he tends to actually provide pretty solid advice and do his job very well. Most maesters and grand maesters, I would say, are probably in the genius range, because to get through the Citadel, you have to master so many different things and go through so much study. I think it really tends to weed out the unworthy. Next we have Jaehaerys Targaryen. I think it's uncontroversial. Widely considered to be the greatest king Westeros ever had by a large margin. Was an administrative genius who ensured universal peace and prosperity. I believe he completely rewrote the laws, the realm's legal code, and just was all round, did pretty much everything right throughout his reign. Illyrio, same reason as Varys. He came from nothing and became a magister and one of the wealthiest men in the free cities, solely on his intelligence. 135, we have Doran Martell. So just kind of edging on the genius area. Once again, I don't think this is very controversial. Doran Martell is widely regarded as being a genius by most people. Most people think of him as being exceedingly shrewd, cautious, and careful. Part of that is due to his gout, which makes him use his mind a bit more. But there's only so much circumstances can force you to use your mind. He has decades-long schemes that kind of go into fruition. I don't really want to go into too much detail about Doran, but I think that makes sense. He's regarded as being one of the best players of the Game of Thrones. He's also someone who hasn't really been left holding the bag, unlike a lot of other people. True, things kind of backfired when Oberyn died, But that wasn't really his fault. It was his brother being, yeah, it was his brother's fault. Let's see, Tywin Lannister. I think this is uncontroversial. I don't think Tywin's quite a genius, but he is in the very he is in the what would be the very superior intelligence. I don't really think I need to justify it too much. Tywin is an administrative genius. When he was running the country, there was peace and prosperity. He does a good job running the economy. He does a good job managing vassals. He does a good job with intrigue. Tywin's pretty much good at everything he puts his mind to. And pretty much everybody seems to hold his intellect and his abilities in very high respect. And he has the quick trade in the CK2 Game of Thrones mod. Bran has the quick trade as well. I think it's mostly an informed ability. People are just like, oh, Bran's really smart. Bran is a genius. Bran's gonna, like, okay, he's crippled now, but he can still be a lord and a ruler and that kind of thing. So it's kind of an informed ability. I haven't really seen him do anything that requires that much intellect, but I guess. Daenerys is similar, where she gets the quick trade in the CK2 Game of Thrones mod. And you might be saying, Argent, why are you relying on what traits they get in a mod? Because the mod is extremely detailed, and the people who made it obviously know what they're doing. So, but Daenerys is described in the books as being able to learn languages almost instantaneously, and people seem to think she has a near genius intellect, despite the fact that we've seen no evidence of this. But I'm just going with what basically the lore says. Davos Seaworthy, he's not really a character you would think of as being intelligent, but I remember when I was playing the CK2 Game of Thrones mod, they gave him the quick trait. And I was kind of like, is he really quick? And I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, Davos is very intelligent. He's just not very educated or kind of refined. But he's an amazing negotiator, an amazing quick talker. He's, as far as we can tell, he's a good administrator. He probably has a pretty good head for figures, even if he can't read. But he pretty much excels at everything he puts his mind to. And he's proved to be very cunning, very just kind of capable. Like I said, his kind of thing is diplomacy and stewardship, I guess, in CK2 terms. But I don't think it's really controversial to say that Davos is very bright. Oberyn Martell kind of acts like a tool, but Oberyn Martell is very intelligent. He did study as a maester at the Citadel. He is a master of poisons. I think to be a master poisoner, you have to be pretty smart to just kind of know which poison does what, to like know how to handle them so you don't kill yourself. Oberyn Martell does strike me as being pretty intelligent. He is a very well educated and read man. He's just also grossly irresponsible, hedonistic, and impulsive. Roose Bolton, once again, not a genius, but a very intelligent man. I don't think it's particularly controversial. Most people seem to think Roose Bolton's intelligent. He's able to outmaneuver Robb Stark and all the people around him and become ruler of the North through his various schemes. He's a master of intrigue. By all accounts, he's a very skilled, he does a good administrator. While he is a brutal man and a sadist and a rapist, the lands around the Dreadfort are very peaceful and well kept, especially compared to a lot of the other parts of the North. So, pretty much a combination of in-universe people saying he's intelligent, his consistently well thought out and successful actions, and I think he has the quick trait in the CK2 Game of Thrones mod as well. Aegon the Sixth Targaryen. Once again, don't think this will be pretty controversial because Aegon the Sixth is well educated. Pretty much all the people who tutor him say that he's bright. Varys says that he is the prince that was promised. The various people who teach him are all intelligent, think he is. Tyrion thinks he's intelligent. There's no indication he's a genius, but he is a very bright young man and would be an able administrator if he was able to become Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. Also, you know what they say about Targaryens. Whenever they're born, the gods toss a coin. On one side, genius, on the other, madness. And he pretty clearly fell on the good side of the coin. Aegon the Conqueror, same reason as his namesake. Aegon was able to plan an invasion of the Seven Kingdoms, and he was able to forge them together, literally in the Iron Throne, and he was able to stay on the throne and establish a dynasty. Anyone can conquer, especially if you have dragons, but Aegon was very skilled in using bluffs. He was skilled in manipulating his opponents, how to divide and conquer. He had a lot of shrewd ideas, like converting to the faith of the Seven, things like that. Once again, I think the fact that he was able to conquer the Seven Kingdoms, as disparate as they were, and forge them into a working system that would survive for 300 years, and is so kind of it's so into the core of how people think now that even once the Targaryens were finished, the next dynasty carried off at his kingdom more or less how they had left it. Visenya, for the same reason, she seems to have been Aegon's equal in just about everything. Very similar personality in a lot of ways. She seems to have been kind of the brains, along with Aegon, behind the thing. Rhaegar, I think Rhaegar is overrated. I don't think he's a genius. I don't think anything Rhaegar's done has shown him to be particularly, like, super bright or genius level intellect. He is well read. He is intelligent. He is pretty good at whatever he sets his mind to do. Aside from people just kind of romanticizing him, though, I haven't seen any evidence that he's some kind of genius. Samwell Tarly, once again, I think he's overrated. He is very curious. He is certainly bright. I haven't seen any particular evidence that he's a genius, though. Book Stannis, once again, not a genius, but Book Stannis, I think, is definitely above average intelligence. Generally speaking, you have to be fairly smart to be a commander. I think the best generals are like in the 135 range, or 136 is the average for the greatest generals in history. Stannis is a good battlefield commander. He's probably in the top 3 or top 5 in the series. He's won a lot of great battles. As I think a lot of his intelligence is kind of much like Ned. Like, Ned is not dumb by any means. He's just kind of naive and bound in a very rigid code. And I think Stannis is very similar. Stannis is not a stupid man. He's just very bound in his code of honor. Marjorie Tyrell I gave 120 to. Marjorie is very hard because we don't have POV chapters. And we view her through Cersei, and Cersei's a lunatic. So, like, we don't know, because in the show she's portrayed as being a lot more manipulative and conniving. And whereas in the books, there's really no indication of that. It's just kind of a fan theory. Nevertheless, in both, she proves herself to be a very able politician. Very intuitive, very able to kind of read people. She tends to be more of the flies with honey versus flies with vinegar type. But she's certainly good at plotting, she's good at planning, and she's good at getting people to do what she wants without resorting to violence. The High Sparrow, I think to be able to organize something like the Sparrow movement and to come to power from basically nothing, I think you have to be pretty intelligent. He is a charismatic speaker. He is a shrewd player of the Game of Thrones. And he does beat Cersei. He beats Cersei and he beats a lot of people. So, I don't know. I think that's pretty straightforward. I think Olenna Tyrell is overrated. I think she is pretty smart. I don't think she's a genius by any means. She got beaten by Cersei. And then she got beaten by Jaime, of all people. So, I don't know. I don't think Olenna Tyrell's smart. I think a lot of it is just kind of her prickly personality makes people think she's smarter than she is. Kevin Lannister. Kevin Lannister is kind of in his brother's shadow. People kind of call him the B grade version of Tywin Lannister, or the VHS copy of the DVD of Tywin Lannister. Being a B grade version of Tywin Lannister is nothing to be ashamed of, though, as he's widely regarded as being the most capable, competent ruler of his generation. Kevin is not quite up to the standards of his brother, but he's certainly a very smart, very competent leader. Once again, while if you're standing in the shadow of a titan, kind of probably the most powerful man, as he says in the Seven Kingdoms, if you're kind of the B grade version of that, that's nothing to be ashamed of. Ned Stark, maybe it's kind of weird to have Ned Stark as being above average. Oh, I forgot Robb Stark. Robb Stark seems pretty intelligent. He has horrible judgment and terrible intuition. But I think he is able to be a pretty able administrator. He is pretty skilled at leading his army into battle. There's really nothing to indicate that Robb isn't above average. In terms of his intelligence, he just has very bad judgment, much like his father. Ned I'm putting at 115, a bit above average, because even though Ned has terrible judgment in a lot of cases, most people seem to think he's a good ruler, that he is a thoughtful, measured man. In kind of contrast to Robert, he was always the one who kind of thought about things first and was a bit more cautious. Nothing Ned has ever done has really made me think his raw IQ is bad. I just think he has bad judgment, he's naive, and he's very rigid and inflexible. Myrcella Lannister has had very little on-screen time, but we're told that she's intelligent. So it's an informed ability, so I just gave her above average. Kat is impossible to put down. I had no idea where to put her. Because on one hand, she theoretically should be intelligent, but she has by far the worst judgment of any character in the series. Look at the Order of the Green Hand series, Why Catelyn Tully Sucks, and they go into detail about it. Sansa and Arya are both above average. They both seem to be pretty clever, but nothing they've ever done is like genius-like or super intelligent requiring. Like I said, they're both definitely above average, but they get outwitted all the time. Cersei Lannister, as Tywin said, I don't mistrust you because you're a woman, I mistrust you because you're not as smart as you think you are. Cersei is nowhere near as smart as she thinks she is. She's above average intelligence, as Tyrion put it. But the fact that like virtually every scheme she hatches sucks and falls apart. The only person she could beat was Ned Stark, and that's because Ned Stark has horrible judgment, and Ned Stark basically trusted her anyways. Yeah, there's nothing about Cersei that is particularly intelligent. And what intelligence she does have is ruined by her arrogance. Melisandre, maybe people think she should be higher. I can't think of Melisandre ever doing anything particularly intelligent. I guess she's well educated and she knows the higher mysteries. But she has horrible judgment. She seems to continually lead Stannis into disaster after disaster. And she thinks Stannis is the Messiah, which is really weird. Not that I don't love Stannis, but yeah, I see nothing about her that puts her up there. Euron Greyjoy and Yara Greyjoy, they're smart for Ironborn, but the Ironborn are kind of a race of retards, so in the race of the 85 IQ, the 110 IQ man is king. Show Ramsay is above average intelligence. He probably should be higher on this list, but in the books, Ramsay is really fucking stupid. So, I don't know. Tommen and Bronn are slightly on the higher end of average. Tommen has never shown himself to be particularly intelligent. Granted, he doesn't have much screen time. He hasn't shown himself to be dumb either. He's smart enough to know what he doesn't know and to listen to people smarter than him. But he doesn't appear to be a particularly innovative thinker. Once again, though, we don't really know. But it's kind of an informed ability. People generally think that Joffrey is the dumbest of the three. Myrcella is the smartest, and Tommen's kind of in the middle. Braun gets gets the upper end of average. I don't think I need to explain that. Jon Snow has not done anything particularly intelligent. He's not particularly stupid. He's just kind of naive. I don't really think I need to go into detail about that. I think it's pretty straightforward. Jaime Lannister and Robert, neither of them is dumb per se. They're just very unintellectually curious. They're hotheads. They tend to rush in without thinking. And this their inability to see the big picture generally lets smarter people run circles around them. Well, neither of them is bad as a military commander. Nothing either of them has ever done has shown particular intelligence. My guess is when they were fighting the Robert's Rebellion, that Jon Arryn and Ned did all the commanding, and Robert just kind of ran around. Stannis is really stupid in the show. That should probably be like 90. He's like retarded in the show. Daenerys Targaryen in the show has never done anything intelligent. We're told she's intelligent, but there's no indication of this. Rhaenys Targaryen, I don't really need to go into detail about that. She was kind of the vapid one who liked pretty boys and pretty music. Theon Greyjoy is not particularly bright. He's bright for an Ironborn because the Ironborn are fucking stupid. Actually, Joffrey should be lower than that. But, like, his plan to take Winterfell was actually pretty smart and would have won them the war. But the rest of the Ironborn were too dumb to like, notice that. But yeah, I'm giving him a 95. Joffrey is borderline retarded. He's never done anything, especially in the books, to show he's particularly, like, not stupid. It's not just that he's cruel, he's also stupid. I think Tyrion says we've had stupid kings, we've had reckless kings, but we've never had a stupid, reckless king before. I think that's very true. I don't think anyone's gonna... he's dumber in the books. He's maybe like 90 in the show and like 85 in the book or something. He's like, the inbreeding was not good for him. Ramsay Bolton is really dumb in the books. He's vicious, but he's never won a battle. His so-called schemes are betraying people who already trust him and like raping helpless girls. He's never done anything particularly clever. Balon Greyjoy is borderline retarded. I've talked about that elsewhere. Lancel Lannister is not very intelligent. Victarion is portrayed as basically being like retarded in the books, like just as being severely mentally handicapped. Drogo is, in my view, retarded. Drogo has never shown anything indicating any type of intelligence. He literally is like a caveman. He's like, ooh, Danny pretty. Ooh, sun and stars. Ooh, rape. Or no, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be doing, ooh, rape. I like rape. It's just stuff like that, and he just rules his whatever it's called, Khalasar, in like the most shit tier way possible. He literally doesn't really rule. He just beats people up who get in his way. You're like, well, he's a great warrior, Argent. Yeah, but he's like 6'6", and he's like 300 pounds of muscle. It doesn't matter how smart you are. In a society like that, you just beat the shit out of everything that moves. Nothing the man's ever done has indicated any type of intelligence, and he seems like some kind of a moron. So Drogo gets that. Gregor Clegane is actually retarded. Now, he probably was dumb to begin with, but it's pretty obvious he has a brain tumor, which is partially why he has constant psychotic rage, and it's probably lowering his IQ. Gregor Clegane basically can just be pointed in a direction, and they have him as like a heat-seeking missile to blow stuff up. He can barely talk properly, though. His mind's so slow. And Hodor is Hodor. So that's my list of who I think the smartest and dumbest characters in Game of Thrones are. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure to follow me on VidMe, Gab, and Twitch. And I'll talk to you guys later.